Hello and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm Frank Wander. I'm the CEO and founder of PeopleProductive, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Terri Mays, a certified culture engineer. So if you've been with us the last few episodes, you realize that we've been covering a lot of different human factors that affect human performance and behavior that people in a workplace, especially leaders, should be familiar with. And today we're going to be going over familiarity bias. And it is a real danger. This is something that humans are actually wired to do. Humans are wired to prefer the familiar. So this has a big impact in the workplace if you're not aware of it and you don't manage it. And it, quite honestly, can have a very big impact in people's personal lives. You know, a good example is, people's desire to just stick with building up lots of company stock in their 401k plan, even though there may be a danger to that. We've seen that when companies go out of business, people lose their job and a lot of their retirement savings because it's all in company stock. They've always said diversify, but people go, hey, I know the company. I'm very comfortable with the stock. They stick with it in spite of the fact there is in fact a better diversification strategy. And so you see this all the time. And I think you've got to guard against it as a leader, especially when people are under pressure and they're working together. So Tara and I are going to talk a little about this today and the things you can do to avoid it. Right, Tara?
That's right. We are hardwired for survival. Everything that we do is just to keep the brain in this space where we feel like we're safe, where there's no danger, no threats. And whenever we see something that we're not familiar with, there's this danger factor that comes with it, that fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know how this is going to turn out. Whereas things that we are familiar with, it's very easy because you've been there, done that before. You know what's going to happen next for the most part. So there's a certain level of comfort that's there. And so when you tend to only do things that you're familiar with, it really puts you at a disadvantage because you don't have the opportunity to learn something new. And that's where you want to be, especially in these days and times where technology is changing our lives. Just think about the changes and the impact that iPhones alone have had on our lives. If you're only going with what's familiar, you're probably still carrying a flip phone or, a BlackBerry,
Hey, I'm really comfortable with that. You're making fun of me,
something,
Terry.
a pager, something
Yeah.
that's so archaic because, people get in that place where they're just afraid to try something new. They're afraid to step out there and see something different. But when you do, you get a whole new world of opportunity available to you. The opportunities are just off the charts. And this even transcends, just choosing something that's familiar or unfamiliar to you, but also when it comes to hiring staff, not just choosing people that look like you or that talk like you or have the same interests as you. You really do want to be a diverse community so that you get the benefits of having multiple points of view. And in turn, you build better products. It's just a proven fact that if you can have people thinking from different perspectives, you really do get better outcomes. You really do make better decisions when you have more information and you can have people thinking about things from a different perspective. So it's so important for innovation, for creativity. We've talked about this so many times, but having those diverse groups, those diverse thoughts in the room really makes such a huge difference. If you've got a room full of people that all think alike, talk alike, you're going to probably create the same thing over and over again. It's going to be hard to bring in some new, innovative, creative, out of the box idea when you have people that think alike in the room and no one challenges that. In order to innovate, you have to challenge, you have to disrupt. That's just part of the process. And challenge is not a bad thing, even though a lot of times people that are doing the challenging or disruption are seen as bad players. It's really a good thing. And we have to rewire our brain so that we can embrace those things that we're not familiar with and really start to lean into that place where we can grow.
Yeah, and innovation is a good one to bring up because it certainly does play into these human factors of innovation. There are a set of them. And the reality is familiarity does get in the way of people really going out of their comfort zone to choose new things. But as Terri said, challenge. We've done it. We've done talks and series on innovation. Challenge is how you drive innovation. You've got to get people challenged to get the mind in gear to begin thinking about alternatives. It's really super important. And this has been studied pretty deeply. Actually, two psychologists, a guy named Chip Heath and Amos Tversky, did a study of different gambling options with people, part of behavioral economics. They looked at gambling choices, and they found that people would go with a familiar choice gambling wise, even when they knew there were better odds on something else, because they just felt comfortable with it. And people make choices, they prefer the familiar. And as a company, you're going to want to implement a number of things to help people to get around this. So one way to do it is to start relying on data. Now, when people go out to maybe look for a product, if an existing vendor they like happens to have a product in that space and they don't go out and gather a lot of data, they're going to end up buying that product because they like the vendor, they're familiar with them. And so product selection, going out, getting a quantifiable means of evaluating different vendors, very important. You can't have people just come in and say, hey, we've looked at it, this is it, where's the data? Show me the data. Very, very important to get that kind of data in place, because this is how you guard against people just going off and doing what they're comfortable with. A lot of things they can do, curiosity is one thing that gets, and play are things that tend to get people more open to other ideas. They've showed that when people are being very playful, they're very open to other considerations and less locked into what they're familiar with. So these are just a couple of things you could do and think about. Terri,
Yeah.
you want some more?
We talked about that self-limiting behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was last week, but you really do want to be aware of how you might be limiting yourself by just sticking with what's familiar to you, because it's easy. And it is. It's very easy. It's comfortable. Everybody likes comfort. We want everything to be easy. We just want a big, giant, easy button for life where we just push it. I can't remember if that was Staples or Home Depot. Somebody had an easy button that they
That
were.
was Staples. That was easy.
Yeah,
I
that
have
was
that
easy.
somewhere.
That's kind of what we want for life. We want the easy route. We don't want challenge. We don't want things to be difficult or time consuming. We want things to be quick, especially in
Mhm.
these times. Now things are just microwave, lightning fast. You place an order online, you expect to be able to get it delivered same day, next day at the latest.
Yeah.
Whenever I've placed an order and it takes like 3 or 4 days, I'm like, "Oh my god, it takes forever to get that." I'm
Yeah.
probably not gonna order from them anymore because it takes too long, because we're so conditioned now,
Yeah.
we have just become used to a couple of days, and that's all you have to wait or less. And so we live in this society that wants things fast and familiar. We want things that we know are good,
Mhm.
and we want to stick with what we know. And it's really a challenge to bring yourself out of that mindset. But, being a little bit more mindful about that bias that you have towards things that are familiar and things that just the awareness of it alone is good to help you come out of that space so that you're not making all of your decisions, making all of your choices, responding to life based on things that are familiar to you.
Yeah. And, listen, it's super important. If you are going out to do things, you got to look for diverse opinions. Get the contrarian in the room to bring up other options, so a group of people can have a self-limiting belief. We did talk about that. You can go find that episode. Not just individuals, but teams, departments, and companies have self-limiting beliefs. That's why these naysayers are really good. Sometimes people don't like them. I think they're great to have people around who question things, because that can help you from going with the familiar, getting the data, getting that list of alternative options onto the table, and making sure people have a diversity of experiences. That's why diversity matters. Hiring people, diverse experiences and viewpoints, weaving that into the team so you don't get stuck with this familiarity bias. And it affects a lot of things. You can go look up the halo effect. That's an example of familiarity bias. They did studies where, somebody gave people one piece of negative information on a candidate. Let's say they're the best candidate. They have, multiple candidates come in. They only provide a negative option on this one person. Everybody immediately goes, no, the person's terrible. And they've done this. That's a halo effect. And in fact, they were just out to prove that, one little piece of information would actually influence these people to shy away from just the best candidate. And, they could set it up so that whole hearsay thing and all these things that go on, they can be very damaging because that creates negative familiarity. And that's just as bad as positive familiarity, honestly.
Yeah. You want to give people a chance, everybody has growth opportunities. We've
Yeah.
all had that day where we were just not our best self. We could have done something better, said something better, been more attentive, been more kind. None of us are perfection where we get it right every day. But give people a chance to grow. Give
Come
people a
on,
chance.
Terry, you get it right. Who are you kidding? I know.
I really try,
Yeah.
but I still don't. I still don't get it right all the time. So give people a chance to grow and to learn. Don't just start labeling people as X, Y, or Z. You fill in the blank on that label that we like to label things all the time and label people. And that really limits them. It limits their growth. And if they're not careful, it can really stifle them in a way that impacts their life. So make sure that you're not doing that to people. Give them a chance to grow. Give them the chance to become better. Use the things that to help
Mhm.
people. Instead of just labeling people as, a problem maker or they don't follow through, work with that person, become a mentor, encourage them to do
Oh, yeah.
better instead of just, putting a label on people and shying away from them.
Oh,
As a
yeah.
leader in particular, you want to make sure that you're leaning into those folks and start some mentoring sessions with that person. Or if there's a small group of them that just need a little bit of coaching, sit down with them and have some honest conversations with them. You'll be surprised, people get left behind from promotions because they have a bad attitude and they don't realize that they have a bad attitude. They just have always been that way and they don't realize that people avoid them. But
Yeah.
a real leader will sit down with that person and have that hard conversation with them and help them. So, not just to point out somebody's flaws, but to help them get better. And you really have to be self aware in order to do that. You really have to be able to challenge your own biases
And to
about
care, and
and
to
limit
care about the people, to care about them in a
absolutely.
genuine way. I
You've
mean,
got to care.
certain leaders just do much better. There's no question. They unlock much more potential and they have high expectations, and people rise to meet your level of expectation. That's science, by the way, as is the familiarity effect, the halo effect,
Yes.
self-limiting beliefs. All these things are science. You've got to understand the human factors. People are wired a certain way, they behave in a certain way for certain reasons. And these can have positive and negative effects. So, as a leader or an individual contributor, the more you know about the human side of business, these human factors that drive human performance, team performance, company performance, the more effective you're going to be in your role, the more you're going to be able to contribute. And as a leader, you're just going to be able to take people further. So, listen, we're here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We're on a series here. We're covering different human factors, looking at different experiments. You can go look up familiarity effect. You will get tons of information. There's lots of actual experiments out there. You can see the real science experiments where this has been done and proven, and you can find them very, very quickly. None of this is stuff that just kind of, you know, make believe. This is all real. It's absolute science. You should embrace it. You should learn about it. It's an important part of your role if you're contributing in a company. But so tune in next week. We haven't picked the topic yet, but they're always good. So tune in, join us, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock for another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. And subscribe, please, to the channel.
Yes. Bye for now.
Take care.